What's up, everybody? Just want to take a quick second and let people know that I am self-supported. I now put all of my episodes on Substack for paid subscribers. I put them up early, and then 24 hours later, I release them to the public on all my platforms. I also have Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, Buy Me a Coffee, Zelle, PO Box, and I don't think, oh, Locals, Patreon. And all of the links are in the show notes of every single episode I put out. So look forward to continuing to provide great conversations. And thank you all for your continued support. Martin, thanks for coming back on. I listened to your conversation with Danny from a couple of days ago, and maybe I misinterpreted it, but I was like, wow, Martin seems optimistic where we're at. Am I wrong by saying that? We usually start off our conversation with the collective, we're fucked. But
Well, we're going into this downward recession, okay, into 2028. It will be a depression more like in Europe. And it is conflicting depending upon where you live. I would say it is going to get very, very bad for Europe. Um, you know, I had a friend who attended the Vienna Peace Conference last week, I think it was, and he said it's no longer a peace conference. All they're talking about is war. We have to increase drafts and things. I mean, there wasn't one word of peace. This has been going on for 20 some years, and it's always been a peace conference. All of Europe is passing laws. Anybody that even talks about peace or against war, you're a Russian propagandist. And look, they are so far down the road at this stage in the game. I just posted. I got an email from one of our longtime clients in Austria. He's taking his kids, his family, everybody. They're moving to Paraguay. He says, "You're right. This is just war. Everybody wants war." Maybe they think it's like a video game. I'm not sure, but the way they present this, you even had Kinzinger, who was that Republican who was booted out, but he was there with Dick Cheney on the January 6th commission against Trump. He even came out and said we can defeat Russia in 3 days. So what, they act as if we can destroy them and they don't even get off a shot. It's just, I don't know where this stupidity comes from, honestly. As you know, back in the 80s, I knew Margaret Thatcher. I could have intelligent conversations with heads of state back then, directly, no problem. I can't think of one head of state today that I'd even want to sit down and shake hands and have a drink with.
yeah, you were talking about that in Macron and the arrogance of France. I want to come back to Europe, but I want to shift to the United States here because we were talking offline. I want to pick up where we were discussing in terms of what are your thoughts on what the Trump administration has done so far since returning to office?
Um, I understand what Trump is doing. We were all taught back then in school, protectionism and tariffs and protecting trade and all this stuff. Um, but um, honestly, nobody, in my opinion, in government even understands their own statistics. I disagree with Trump profoundly when it comes to China. Um, Look, I've I was even called in by China back in the 97 Asian currency crisis, met with the central bank. And uh, I know Asian culture. I've been there. I've done this. We have an office in China, right? It's completely opposite of Europe. In Europe, it's more like an Iranian bazaar. You know, I want $100. I'll give you 50. No, no, let's make it 80. Now I'll give you 60. You haggle. All right. Asia isn't like that. I mean, a cab in Tokyo, I've said, yeah, you would get in, and if it was, 8,000 yen, and you give him a 10, tell him keep the change, he hands it back to you. No, 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 that's the price. And Hong Kong is completely different. In Hong Kong, if it's, $8, you hand him a 10, he says, get out, the rest is mine. um, it's, they don't, it's this loss of face issue. And when the Japanese market crashed in '89, there were people jumping out of windows and committing harikari. I mean, I screwed up, therefore it's my responsibility, and that was it. Um, you don't have that culture in the West. You had kamikaze pilots. You're going to fly your plane in, and you're going to hit a carrier, and you're going to die. Okay, yes, I will do that. I mean, they didn't have that in the US and Europe. So my point is that I think Trump has made a huge mistake in going after China the way he has. That makes China must stand its ground. All right. My sources have said that China has at least now told Trump they're willing to talk privately. If he does not take this, I got to say he's a fool. He doesn't understand what the hell international trade's about. I said many times, Europe is still the Marxist protectionist mercantile model. High tariffs, protect jobs. They view themselves as we make stuff and sell it to other people and bring the money home. But they, I published on our blog. I mean, this statistics show the net worth of an average German is below that of an Italian because they keep the taxes so high or afraid of inflation, things of this nature. So it's very austerity that they have there. So, I published a piece and, hoping some people basically sent it off to Trump. But basically, out of every $4 spent in the world by a consumer, all right, a dollar is an American's. Out of every $10, only $1.20 is a European. Europe has 450 million people versus us at 330. That shows you the difference in the economic models. Now, China is going to surpass the United States, and it, after 2032, it will become the financial capital of the world. They are already now the second largest economy, but the second largest consumer-based economy. They looked at Europe and they looked at the United States. What made the United States work and Europe fail? Consumer. Okay. So, China has a consumer-based economy. They're trying to encourage their people, raising living standards, basically, resurrect the Silk Road, etc. All right. That's not an economy you want to fuck with, really, in all honesty. They should be our biggest trading partner, not Europe. Europe is protectionist. They're look. I just got off the phone this morning. Stammer wanted to take the EU back or take Britain back into the EU. He wanted to reverse Brexit. He can't get away with that. So they're in negotiations right now that he'll accept and join the EU and then impose all their restrictions on food and veterinary products. That's going to, forget it. You'll kill the United States deal with them. They do not engage in free trade. They don't believe it. They're Marxists. And this is part of the what the computer is showing for a Great Depression in Europe. I mean, these people have got to be driven out of power.
So the United States, though, are they isolating China? I mean, I heard Scott Bessent the other day talking about. I mean, it appears that they're making these countries choose between the United States and China. Are they isolating China or attempting to isolate them? And then how will China's response be to all this?
Look, China cut off rare earth. I would suspect it's going to really extend to like medical. If they cut off medicine, you're going to see a real, uproar here in the United States because most of the blood pressure medicines, all this stuff comes from China. Look, the biggest problem we have is not just the Trump administration, but the rest of it. They do not understand these trade numbers. You have a capital account and you have a current account. All right, if China bought all the U.S. national debt, that goes into the capital account. But all the interest we pay out, which would be $1 trillion, would go to China. And then headlines, we have $1 trillion trade deficit with China. It's got nothing to do with goods and services. And this is what Trump has got to understand. You can't just look at that number. All right. I published the details of it. It includes, yes, goods, services, all interest and dividends. All right. So any profit on a trade or whatever goes through the current account. It's got nothing to do with trade. And most people don't understand this. The press never explains it. And I can tell you people in Washington do not understand. They don't, I'm just beside myself. I've been screaming at them for a week, wake the hell up.
This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, with Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. Vaulted is offering all of my listeners $50 of free gold when you click on my sign-up link. They have a tool called Vault Plan that allows you to passively add your gold position every month. Just activate it for 6 months and you will get $50 of free gold in your account. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. What about, they're on the media saying, watching interviews, Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessent, President Trump, talking about, we're China's biggest customer, so they have to make a deal with us because if they lose the United States, they have nowhere else to go.
Not true. Like I said, he's living in the old world when we were all taught about that, in the 60s in school. It's wrong. It's simply wrong. All right. And he thinks that we're the biggest customer for China. Perhaps, but at the same time, he doesn't understand China owned 10% of the US national debt. So that 10% of that $1 trillion or 100 billion was going through the current account. So that's 100 billion that looks like a trade deficit to them. It's got nothing to do with trade. It's I don't know. I mean, it gets. I mean, I guess all I can say is most of these economists or whatever, they just are domestic. They don't look at international. They don't understand it. Um, Maybe you had to be a hedge fund manager to see it. I really don't know. But I mean, we've got offices everywhere from China, Dubai. I mean, that's why I do podcasts in Serbia, Croatia, Brazil, Netherlands. I mean, globally. Um, I get to see what people are thinking about internationally. And I think that's important. And they're just not, they don't understand what they're doing. And what he is, uh, if I were China, I would cut off medicine and watch him squirm.
People will go nuts in this country if that happened.
Oh, absolutely. Because it seems as though nobody in Washington understands this.
You do it for a week, people will go. I mean, if that includes like any type of psychotics, antidepressants, anything of that nature, people will go. They'll lose it.
A lot of your medicine comes from China, also India. Um, so it's not all t-shirts and stuff, and pink umbrellas.
Unless could you pivot to say Israel? Do we get a lot of pharmaceuticals from?
Some, yeah, but I mean not the majority.
So what's two questions in regards to China? I had somebody else on, and Michael Oliver, and he was saying how he doesn't believe that, yes, technically China is a communist country and they have a dictator, but their trade, their economy says differently. Do you feel that way about China now?
Yeah, look, China's not communist. I mean, this is just another example of people that don't understand Asia. All right. Communism is when the government owns everything. There is no private ownership. That is not China. All right. However, it's this loss of face thing. They didn't change the name of the party because they would then have to take Mao's picture off of the Forbidden City and admit that everything that the government did up to then was wrong. It's a loss of face. So fine, they left it as the Communist Party, but they're not communist. It's like we claim we're a democracy and Europe claims it's a democracy, and they're not. All right, you don't get to vote for the head of state in the EU, Ursula. None of them stand for election. They're appointed by other, politicians. Even in Canada now, I mean, a lot of Canadians I talk to, hey, I didn't put Carney there. Under a parliamentary system, the people are denied the right to vote for who's the head of state. If they call themselves a democracy, it's absolute, propaganda.
What's in China's best interest right now with the United States?
That Trump wakes the hell up and sits down privately. You cannot do this sort of public bashing. And he needs to understand, two things here. That one, we always had the one China policy. So that meant we technically agreed that Taiwan was part of China. As long as that was in place, they didn't need to go get Taiwan. It's saving face, all right? Then the Biden administration, the neocons took that over, and they're the ones that started all this shit. You had Pelosi flying over to Taiwan. Oh, independent. That's war. They knew what they were doing. I mean, I met with some high level people in Congress, and I was told a year ago, we're going to be at war with China, not Russia. And I said, I'm telling you, it's going to be, you better pay attention to what they're doing in Russia, that they're telling you to pay attention to China. That's not the problem. All right. Maybe about 6 months later, maybe a little bit longer. I don't remember. They called me on the phone, the people I met with. They said, I think you're right. I said, I know I'm right. You're just getting disinformation from the military. It's this is basically it. I mean, China China will be the financial capital of the world.
It's inevitable.
Simple as that.
It's inevitable at
It's
this point.
inevitable, absolutely inevitable. Um, Look, there's a huge difference between the communism that China had and the communism that Russia had. Um, Russia was really dictated by Stalin. And Lenin wanted to create, although communism, he wanted to create it more on the basis of United States, that each republic retained its sovereignty. And he even wrote a letter, do not let Stalin succeed me. And it's widely rumored in Russia that they think that Stalin even poisoned Lenin. And once he grabbed power, he took all that sovereignty away, centralized it in Moscow. He purged an awful lot of people because he was a paranoid nut. All right. I mean, I knew people that grew up behind the Eastern, in Germany, behind the wall. And they were taught in school, your parents are not your parents. The state is. And if they ever said anything against the state, you were to report them. That was the communism of Russia. It was a paranoid, anybody that thinks against us has got to be eliminated. Whereas in China, they didn't have that. They had the tall poppy syndrome. If you stuck your head up above everybody else, it got cut off. Fine. All right. Whatever you did otherwise, you stayed within the pack. Fine. We don't care. All right. So that's why when communism fell, basically, what happened was that China, the entrepreneurship in China, the human nature, was still left intact. It was not in Russia. All right. So Russia didn't boom like China did. It's a cultural difference. And I've seen it on both sides. And that's where you have to really look at.
So is the United States then, if they're isolating China, knowing that they will become the financial capital of the world, are they working to kind of destroy it financially from within by getting other countries to side with, making them choose between the United States and China?
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, it's been my computer model that said that they will become the financial capital. I don't know if they've looked at that and are using it. I can't tell you. But they do seem to be more economically afraid of China than Russia. Russia is more of a geopolitical war thing. But there, I think Trump at least understands a bit more. I have put it in the letters and sent it off to the White House. because I was in the middle of all that. When they they were trying to do a regime change in Russia back in 1999. They were blackmailing Yeltsin. They asked me to put in $10 billion into this Hermitage capital. I've refused, as I'm not getting involved in regime changes. And the whole thing basically fell apart. And that's why Yeltsin, when he realized he was being blackmailed by the United States, and on the other side, the communists were using it, that they filed an impeachment motion to remove him. They were trying to take the country back to the USSR. That's why he turned to Putin. Putin was neither an oligarch and he was neither a communist. So all the propaganda you hear from Victoria Nuland, all this stuff, it's because they came within, basically inches of grabbing grabbing Russia. And it was Putin that stopped them. His last words of Yeltsin to Putin, I can tell you, protect Russia. I mean, most of what we've heard about this is nothing but propaganda. And I laid it all out for the White House and sent it over. And to a large degree, the company that they wanted me to invest in, this $10 billion, the two heads were Eben Safra and Bill Browder. And you can look it up. When Putin was standing next to Trump the first time around and they were on the Russia gate, he said, fine, you can come to Russia and question anybody you want, because they weren't involved. All right. And he says, I want to question who? Bill Browder. And Browder likes to go around saying he's Putin's number one enemy. It's I was in the middle of all this shit. So I know really what happened. And I wrote a book on it. If you really want to go through the whole thing, I got a hold of the Clinton administration declassified documents. It's on Amazon. It's called the Plot to Seize Russia. So I was in the middle of all this. I know that. So I do think that they are aware of that, and I have sent letters directly explaining all this to the White House. So when Trump was trying to set up a negotiation with Putin, what did he do? He basically said that Europe had no place at the table. Why? Because they negotiated the Minsk agreement, Germany and France. And then when Ukraine attacked and had no interest in honoring it, Merkel actually said the truth to the press. They asked her why didn't they stand up for it, and she said publicly, that we never intended to honor that peace agreement. It was just to buy time for Ukraine to build an army. So, if I was Putin, I wouldn't agree to any peace deal. You have all of Europe saying, building an army. You have Tusk in Poland ordering all males to basically subject themselves to military training, handing out guns to kids in grade school, to 10-year-olds, to learn, so they learn how to use a gun. So what are you going to do? Send an army of 10-year-olds against Russia? Zelensky's sending out, people with Down syndrome. It's just, the whole thing is crazy. So if I was Putin, I would not sign a peace deal. And this is why Europe is basically telling, Trump to take it and go pound sand.
How much longer can this go on for with Russia, Ukraine?
Europe is getting very desperate at this stage in the game. And look, Putin has drawn so many red lines. You do this, that could be war. They cross it. do this, that could be war. Um, Biden finally gave permission to use missiles to attack directly in Russia within what was the last 3 weeks of his administration. Um, they have done everything they can. And what this is about, they've been trying to get um, Russia to attack anything in NATO so they could say he's the aggressor and start World War III. And he knows the game. He's not stupid. He can see it now. So what I am afraid of is that it's going to be like the CIA did with Kennedy at Project Northwoods, which is on Wikipedia. It's been declassified. They went to Kennedy, proposed that they kill Americans, blame it on Cuba to justify an invasion. I'm afraid Europe's going to pull something like that. A false flag, say, oh, Putin did this, and that is justification. And they want to look. I have some very good, very high level sources. France thinks that if they can conquer Russia, they have $75 trillion in assets, natural resources. Then Europe will have that, and it will be twice as much as the U.S. national debt. And voila, France leads Europe, and the Roman Empire is resurrected. It's the same shit as Napoleon and Hitler or whatever. It's no different. All right. In 1966, basically, de Gaulle kicked out NATO and said all American troops out. The response was, does that include the dead ones? So France has its own nuclear power. And you have Macron offering nukes to protect Germany. We can replace the United States. This has been their goal from day one. This is the goal. All right. People talk about the gold. Oh, is it there? Whatever. France removed their gold from the New York Fed in 1971. They were the ones that broke the Bretton Woods. They were buying up dollars and submitting them to the Treasury to redeem them for gold. They were the leaders in breaking it.
So you were saying in your other conversations, the debt crisis, it's, we have one in the United States, but it's more severe in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
So, and you see any country in Europe could have a debt crisis and it's going to spill out. The contagion will just spread all across the region. What I also look at the other factors, in regards to all of the illegals that have flooded into all these countries, and it's a recipe for disaster.
Yes. The migrant crisis is far worse than what we had, mainly because they were all Islam. And they didn't come in to merge and blend with Europe. I mean, Sweden has over 40 districts and they call them no-go zones. It's been reported even in Germany on like a New Year's Eve, I think it was 2,000 girls were raped, and the government, to hide it, said, well, remove the word rape from reports and call it assault. So, I mean, I have friends there. They're leaving. Others that have one that has a 13-year-old daughter and will not even allow her to walk to a bus station for two blocks. This is what's happened. And I hear it from Austria, from Germany, from all over. The joke that I hear from friends in Britain, they say we are now the most favored Islamic nation in the world. I think the number one name for boys being born in Italy is Mohammed. Then you have the debt crisis. And look, none of these governments have any intention of paying off any debt ever. They never have. Right? The only two countries that ever did was Andrew Jackson when he wanted to shut down the Bank of the United States in the 1820s, and Romania. Other than that, every other country has defaulted on their debt. Period. No exceptions. You can go on eBay and buy, you know, Chinese bonds issued in British pounds. Look very pretty. You're going to frame them up, look nice on the wall, you know. Um, but Europe, as you know, when they came to me to form it, and I warned them at that point that in order to compete with the dollar, you had to consolidate the debt. And what they were telling everybody, oh, join and everybody will pay the same interest rate like the United States, and will eliminate all the volatility of the currency. All total lies. Why? Because basically Helmut Kohl, who was Chancellor of Germany, admitted before he died that if he allowed the German people to vote to join the euro, he would have lost 7-3. So he just basically took it in, and his condition was they knew what the Germans would be against, and that was no consolidation of the debt. And I warned them, this is all going to blow up in your face. And they told me in 1998, look, we just have to get the euro in first, because that was establishing their bureaucratic government, and we'll worry about the debts later. This is 2025 and nothing's happened. All right. So what's the problem? They promised everybody pays same interest rate because of a single currency. That's bullshit. We have 50 states, single currency. They pay different interest rates according to the credit rating. All right. And the problem there is that California could go bust. It doesn't take down the federal government. In Europe, there is no federal debt. So we saw it in 2010 when Greece went down. What happened? The traders immediately, we made a lot of money on shorting that one. Who was next? Oh, Spain, France, Portugal. This is the way capital acts. So the problem with Europe, you get one default, and it doesn't matter who. All right. What happens? Oh, who's next? And it becomes a contagion, and that takes down the euro. That can't happen in the United States because we have a federal debt. That's the difference. They don't.
So if this happens and the contagion spreads, am I understanding then all that money is going to flood? It's going to flood the United States into treasuries and gold?
Pretty much. I mean, mainly because you're also looking at the problem of even without the sovereign debt crisis, they're trying to push for war ASAP. And it could come this summer. All right. And I'm worried about a false flag even as soon as mid-May. They need something. And Putin's not going to attack, so they're going to have to create a false flag to claim he did. If they don't do something like that, then you're going to have a sovereign debt crisis that takes down Europe. So it's a more or less an issue at this stage in the game of basically survival of the fittest. They need war. Once you get war, then everybody's focused on that. You're patriotic. You buy the bonds, etc. A government defaults when it cannot sell the new debt that paid off the old, because you're in these Ponzi schemes.
It's just a robbing Peter to pay Paul. Money just shifts.
Yeah, it's this is basically what happens. Historically, This is my opinion. This is fact. I've looked at all the governments that defaulted in throughout history.
So if this money comes into the United States, that's going to prevent a sovereign debt crisis in the United States. No?
Yes. See, the U.S. is not the problem. We have the biggest economy, yes. The biggest debt, yes. However, like I said about the consumption or spending of the consumer, basically 26% of all spending, consumer spending in the world is in America. All right. Basically 12% at best is in Europe. They have no economy. They use austerity to oppress their people. All right. It's a highly welfared state that is economically it's going to fail just like communism failed. It's the same theories behind it.
Do you see Europe going kinetic then at some point?
Yeah, I mean, look, um, it's just not a place to be. It's I clients. I told them, look, you better get your gold out, get whatever you can out. That's why all the gold's been coming out of Switzerland and United States, and even the Swiss and the Swedes. All right, both were neutral during World War One and Two. That's gone. Sweden joined NATO. They've sent jets to Poland. It'll no longer be a safe haven for capital. Switzerland, they confiscated what, $8 billion of Russians just simply because they were Russian. Not a safe place to be anymore. They gave up, numbered accounts, all that stuff is gone. If you have money in Switzerland, everybody knows.
The United States then at that point, do you still see, so you see it, does the computer say envision, or does the computer model show a deep recession for the United States?
Not no, it's more of a stagflation type thing where there's lower economic growth, yes, but at the same time, prices are rising because of wars and things of this nature. Um, where Trump is uh, misguided on a lot of things with trade. Um, if you just look at the city of Detroit, you have federal income tax, state income tax, and city. There isn't anybody left there. They all left. New York City used to be the biggest port in the country. Nobody goes there anymore. Why? Taxes, income taxes, unions, and they drove everybody out. They made it so expensive. Oh, well, they're going to have to pay. Well, no, they don't have to pay. They can leave. And it was basically Grover Cleveland, who said in the Panic of 1893, always liked he had a special session, and he was yelling at these Democrats. And he said the same thing. He said, capital can flee. It can move to someplace safe. Labor cannot. All right, you can't put your labor offshore to protect it, but capital can leave. And that's what these Democrats still don't get. The higher you raise your taxes, the more people leave. Just look at the migration crisis now. It's all leaving the blue states to the red states. California, instead of saying, gee, what are we doing wrong that everybody wants to leave? No, let's punish the bastards for leaving, putting an exit tax. I mean, this is the way they respond. They're never the problem. There are no mirrors in government, period. We are always the enemy. And I've seen this in so many different governments. We're the problem, never them.
Where do you see then the United States in the next so with the repatriating gold that's coming in, the attempt to reindustrialize America, what are you seeing them for the next 6 to 12 months in terms of the United States? Stagflation then?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, look, Trump will be successful in bringing companies here. True. Um, but to do that, he's got to deal with the taxes. All right. Look, I got to meet Margaret Thatcher because I was restructuring companies from Japan. And the ones that needed skilled labor, like autos, etc., I was putting them in Britain. If they needed the best tax deal, I put them in Ireland. All right. And I happen to have known her chief economic advisor, Sir Alan Walters. And she had heard this rumor about this guy sending companies here. And he says, yeah, that's Marty. So she was a very smart woman. And I could actually have an intelligent conversation with her. And she asked me why I was doing that. And I said, look, all the regulations and requirements of Germany on top of what somebody earns is 40% higher than Britain. So the worker doesn't get to see any difference. What a worker in Germany takes home versus a worker in Britain is going to be close to the same. But all the regulations and everything else piled on top of it. I mean, it just, I was in London and we had a client, one of the major telecom companies in Germany, and I was called on the phone. They said, we need you here at our board meeting in the morning right away. I said, what's up? You'll find out when you get there. They wanted to lay off 20% of the workforce. And what happened was the government approved that. And at the last minute, the government says, no, that's not fair. You have to make the offer to everybody. I think it was 150,000 at the time to give up your job voluntarily. What happened to people that knew they could get a job across the street took it and left? They got left. They got stuck with the very people they wanted to fire. And so I go to this board meeting. It was like a Harry Carey meeting, and they're resigning. They appointed us as advisors to the pension funds. He says, it's the only asset we have left. And he said, I can't be here because this company's going to go down. And if my name is associated with it, I'll never get another job. Now, I told this story to an IMF board member. And she said to me, yes, I understand. We saw the same thing happen in Greece. It's human nature. Europe is got so many regulations. And while all these people are talking about tariffs and things of that nature, the EU has requirements and on quality. Okay, so it's like chickens can't be washed with chlorine or something. I mean, so many different rules and regulations. And if you grew, one of the ones that they were trying to push through was that since they outlawed nitrogen, fertilizer, if you grew plants in the United States with nitrogen, you can't sell that product to Europe. So forget the tariff. This is an actual ban. And they have that across hormones, anything. I mean, what shots you gave your cow? No, can't come to Europe. They are professional, basically anti-trade. And so it's more than tariffs.
I try to, you're hearing the different perspectives of all this. You asked me last year, I thought we were in for some real financial havoc, but do you think that it'll be minimal here in the United States of pain?
Yes, look with this recent crash. Um, I mean, you can Google it up and find. Look, our computer at the end of the year said, "Look, we're going to have a correction." We even gave the date as April 7th. It was normal. Okay. What did the press do? Oh, this is it. It's a panic. It's all because of Trump. All right. Bloomberg News has crossed to the dark side. I mean, I couldn't believe it. They actually put out a post and said the NASDAQ is now in a bear market and the S&P 500 is soon to follow. It didn't even take out the uptrend line. No technical analysts that I know would even dare call that a bear market. Why? Why did Bloomberg do this? I mean, that's getting to be like MSNBC and CNN, etc. This was a coup. It was an attempted coup, and I spoke to other people about it by the press. They've tried everything to take down Trump. I mean, even attempted assassination stuff, Signalgate. I mean, you just go down the list, and he's had like a Kevlar vest. Everything's bounced off him. So this was just another one. So now you're trying to create a financial crisis in the stock market so you can blame Trump. I guess the idea, was to get Republicans to, oh my God, I lost money all because of Trump in my 401k. And so what's the objective? To get the Republicans to, lament? Oh, I'm sorry. I promise I'll now become a Democrat. I don't know. It's just, I've just never seen the financial press this dishonest.
What do you think the future of oil markets are?
Um, the whole net zero nonsense, climate change, it's been a failure. Look, just look at Germany. First, they had the COVID nonsense. Then they did the climate change. And then they put in the tariffs on Russia. All right. Germany has no fuel. It doesn't even have nuclear power. All right. The German economy has shrunk. Shrunk. I'm not talking about just the decline in GDP. It has shrunk in size because you put so many small businesses into bankruptcy. With the COVID, then the climate change, and then fuel. So here you have the cornerstone of the EU economy, and it's shrinking. All right, it's actually shrinking. So that's why Europe is in serious trouble. U.S., we're not in that position. Here in Florida, you see signs in stores, "Thank you, DeSantis," because we weren't locked down. New York, a lot of the stores were there on Fifth Avenue gone. That I forget what the name of it, but there was a good Italian restaurant everybody used to go to, in the theater district gone. Those were all the COVID nonsense. So the blue states, you saw the worst economic performance. And that's what started the great migration from the blues to the reds. I came to Florida because basically the computer said it would be the number one state to go to. When I came here, it would be 15 minutes max from my house to downtown St. Pete. Now, hour. Traffic is just unbelievable.
Do you, so with the blue states here in America, I don't see them turning around, right? California, New
No.
York. So where does that go? Where
You,
does
you,
California go, for example, or Washington?
no, they're in economic declines. Um, and more people will leave and they don't get it. Um, and, they get more oppressive. And the more people that leave, the higher they have to raise taxes. One of the biggest hedge funds that was in New Jersey moved to Florida. I had a friend from one of the top banks in New York. He called me. He was down here and he said, "Hey, you want to go to dinner?" I thought he was just visiting. Went to dinner. I said, "Oh, how long are you here for?" I moved here. I mean, this is what you see. Uh, Wall Street is being displaced by Miami, Boca Raton area. I mean, Goldman Sachs, I think, moved its most profitable division to Florida. I mean, Wall Street's being gutted.
What is your so all your work, all your analysis you're doing? What is grabbing your attention the most right now? Europe.
Well, you're from an absolute a catastrophe waiting to happen. Yes. Uh, I'm concerned about war. I'm concerned about a false flag, even as soon as middle of May. And um, China, I just hope Trump picks up the damn phone and talks. Uh, not on the air. You cannot deal with China that way. And if you don't do this, I'll do this. Go ahead. Then they take their feet in. You can't expect them to back down publicly. That's a loss of face. Never going to happen.
What about the Middle East?
What I heard last, which was yesterday, so I don't know, was that there was progress with Iran. I can tell you from sources that I had prior to that Iran definitely does not want to have a war with the United States. Um, they know they're not going to fare very well. Um, so there may be progress with that as far as cutting off the Houthis and stuff like that along those lines. But the Middle East, the big real wild card, it remains Turkey. Turkey has the biggest army in the Middle East, and Erdogan wants to resurrect the Ottoman Empire. He's the one that really took down Syria. Um, and he's got his eyes on Lebanon and Jordan.
Yeah, the people in Syria, they're screwed. I nothing they can do.
Look, we drew these borders. They did not. All right. What you have are tribes and Sunni versus Shiite. They don't see themselves, oh, yes, we're all Syrian first. No, they do not. You have Kurds. I mean, look, they're all tribal. They do not get along. Just look at Yugoslavia. When it broke up, okay, all wars and everything else. How did it end? The borders were drawn basically according to ethnic groups. That was the solution for Ukraine. But the neocons didn't want that. They wanted war.
Where can people find you, Martin?
ArmstrongEconomics.com. It's free. We don't sell advertising, and you don't have to put in your email. We don't send out, 50 emails to you every day. None of that stuff.
So again, I mean, I know I've asked this, but do you feel more optimistic of the United States than you did in the past due to all these other things that are happening across the globe?
No, I don't think my optimism has changed. It's just I've always been more pessimistic about Europe. Um, I disagree with Trump on China. Um, Look, I have to look at this stuff objectively and not politically. It it's the old adage. It's the economy, stupid. That's really what it comes down to. All the changes in politics, and the computer's always been right. You know, um, it you take down the economy. I don't care who's in power. It always flips. Simple as that. Doesn't matter. Uh, Margaret Thatcher knew that, and that's why when I wrote that report, it's just time. She told me it must have been at least a year before anybody heard about Tony Blair. And she said the conservatives were going to lose. I said, really? How come? And she said, it's just time. She understood cycles. That's why she came and spoke at one of our conferences. So, I mean, it'd be nice if the world understood that. Um, I will say this is that there's the sequel to the movie, The Forecaster, that they did on me, is supposed to be out maybe within the next few weeks. And and they're also doing a Hollywood movie, kind of like The Big Short on my career, dealing with all these governments and stuff like that. So that's going to be interesting. I don't know who's going to play me.
Who would you want to play you?
I really don't know. I'm supposed to get the script next week to read it over. So we'll see. But I mean, look, when that started, they were questioning whether how much of a deep state really exists. Now it's like put it all in. um, with Kennedy papers coming out and all this stuff that, they've like, I think when it started, I met the head of the studio and he thought the idea of a deep state was a conspiracy theory. So what is that? 4 guys in a room smoking cigars? I said, no. Now he's like, oh my God, they're all over the place. I said, you got it, you know? So
Yeah.
it should be interesting. Looking forward to that.
Congratulations. I mean, I love The Big Short, so I've watched that movie probably 10 times.
This is one of the biggest production houses around. And they're they're in partners also with Netflix, and so look, they got the money.
Are you allowed to say who's going to direct it at this point, or is none of that?
No, I already know who's going to direct it.
But you can't say?
I don't know if I can yet or not. He's been here to my house, so is the owner of the production company. He came here for a week, and we've all spent time together.
Yeah, I'd like to I'd like to do a podcast with that director when you announce it publicly.
Yeah, no problem.
Have both of you on.
I'm sure he would probably enjoy it.
Martin, I always enjoy our conversations, and I look forward to continuing to follow your work. And I'm sure it won't be that long before the next time we talk.
Maybe sooner than you expect.
Absolutely. Thank you, Martin. Mic drop.
All right. Take care.